Namaste and good evening, everybody. I have an image of Meher Baba up on my screen. Someone asked me to do a reading of him and to look into the situation with him not speaking after realization, just to see if we can get a feeling of what that is about. So I really don't know what will come of his reading. He does seem like a very interesting personality, so it may be anyways enjoyable to see what happens with this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with Baba's reading. Okay, so right away when I come up to the image, it's very heavy, but the pendulum is drifting down in circles, one can see, which is interesting. I haven't had that happen before. It kind of went slowly, like in a drifting manner. And now it's just showing, dead. Okay, so this being has indeed passed. And we will lift it. It is still heavy. It's wanting to pull down. That does happen sometimes in the beginning. It takes a little while to get it to come up. Oh, okay, here it comes. It feels like okay. So energy comes out here more in it feels like this is his energy field, which does come forward quite a bit. And it feels good. There's a heaviness to it right now. Everything feels quite fine so far. But let's see what happens. Oh boy, it's getting really heavy. Hopefully I can pick this up, because it does feel, just feels like there's an effort there. Okay, so let's see if it will give us a story, though. Okay, so this man in his life was more like an instructor. The word is an instructor of the cosmos. He spoke about that. He spoke about energies. There was a time in his life when he did experiment with hallucinogens. He was an instructor of matters of the spirit as well. And so he spoke about that. He, what I'm hearing in my mind is he did have a group of ascetics around him, or at least that those were his practices, in which one would do a lot of fasting and have sparse means in terms of clothing, living situation, and live that way, just very stripped down and bare bones. This really was part of his teaching and his instruction. And in terms of these ones that were around him, they were more like ones that were very ecstatic, and like ones that may throw their head back in ecstasy, roll their eyes up. And this is certainly not a real unusual happening within those that have, are moved by the Holy Spirit and things, but they acted kind of crazy. Okay, so this was a group that he had around him, and they enjoyed his energy. They enjoyed his way. Okay, so it's slowing down and getting lighter. Okay, he did have multiple vehicular accidents in which he did cause him damage to his body. Okay, so let's see now. There's a lot of movement outward. I mean, it really does come way out with him. It's very interesting. In terms of, let's just see if this is how far his energy really comes out this way. It's very slow moving, though. Again, interesting. Could be that his mind was quite slowed in a good way, where thoughts slow down and things. Let's see if this is what that means exactly. Okay, yes. So his mind was slowing. There was some space in there between thoughts. Some air, I guess, some breathing room in there. Okay, but in terms of him being completely still, so we can see that the pendulum is saying no, he was not completely still. He was not completely at peace. Okay, so his life travels took him to various places in which he connected with others in a spiritual way and did discuss spiritual matters. Okay, now, and something else of interest about Baba is that he did speak of himself as an avatar. And with this, bringing this label to oneself, what happens is that, if you're an avatar, it does mean that you have completely wiped mind clean at the time of your birth. I mean, there's just no more journey to take. There's nothing more to awaken. And so when one claims they're an avatar and then later says they begin a spiritual journey, it's just something to question. Those things don't line up together, okay? This is part of the way he spoke. He claimed that he was God. Okay, you can see it's getting bigger and heavier. Let's see if this is the right way to speak. It's just not. Okay, so you can't lay claim to being an avatar. It's just not something that even one, if there were some that have walked the earth, they wouldn't even call themselves that. It doesn't happen that way. And this journey that he took happened kind of backwards, where he claimed he was an avatar and then later, had some spiritual awakening. And this, again, these things don't line up. And to speak of yourself as God, this is more ego-based, because one cannot say that they are God. I mean, God is all. It's not an individual persona. It just is the way that it came off for him. And, okay, so he... his teachings, let's see, they had a purpose to them. They made others reflect and go deeper within themselves. It's a very light feeling, though. He had some unusual ways of bringing out his methodology. And he would, I just see him in a room. He's there and he's just by himself. He's just more breathing. He's like pacing back and forth. I don't know what that's about. It's kind of, I see some ribs on him, which, doesn't mean that he was that thin, but it sounds like he tried to really restrict his nutrition and restrict certain things from his life. In terms of him being completely, did he do this all the time? Okay, so he did not, and it's just getting heavy again. So again, let's see what happens. Okay, so Baba persona is one that is, radiates light on a certain level and brings those around him to be more internal. So this sounds like this happened on some levels with the people around him. He had a way with being like a humanitarian, where he gave himself to those that were more impoverished or had diseases. He would bow to them. He would give them his time, his care. Like, I see him treating those that had some bandages and wounds. And this was a very... it was a good thing in the way that he displayed those behaviors, as it gave others a feeling of him being very humble. There's a few things, calling himself a God man, and then some of the humble ways he behaved is another thing. So he's just kind of a bit of a contradiction in that way, I would say. Now, why this is staying down, I'm not sure. So let's see what happens. Okay, so Baba now is one that, so let's see, is he deathless? No, he's sinking a bit. He's sinking a bit. Interesting. He's sinking like, drifting down. And, that could be initially the way the pendulum drifted down. It sounds like in terms of his consciousness, he's just kind of drifting. But when it says down, is this a bad thing? No, he's just kind of drifting along right now. I do see him like, someone would do back float in a pool. They would just sort of let that happen and let go. Wherever it went, it went. It feels like that's what's happening with him. he looks pretty relaxed and at peace in that way. But in terms of him actually finding, you can see a big no. Like the pendulum, this energy knows before I say it, but this non-dual consciousness is not there for him yet. So, that's going to be a little while for him, but he doesn't seem like he's, in a lot of suffering right now. So, he's moving along and floating along. Okay. And this sounds like an okay thing for him right now. But let's see if we can, just saying, it's answering me before I even say it. I was going to say get into this silence thing after enlightenment. Let's see more what this was about for him. And okay, so he did use this sign language with his hands. He used a tablet or some kind of I don't know, numbers or letters that he would show on a tablet thing, I guess. And oh man, this thing does not want to stay up very easily for him. Okay, drifting. Okay, we've heard that. He is drifting. For some reason, it really wants to emphasize he's drifting along, this energy tonight. So he would use this sign language as a way to, come across like I am in a different space in my mind. I am not, it was a way to show how he at least had come out of whatever box he felt like he was in before, of how he spoke, how he behaved. So, it was he felt a display of coming into a whole different state for himself. And he felt with his words, if he used his voice, this may not emphasize this as much. It would feel to others like maybe he was the same man as before. So this was a way that he felt. And again, let's see if it sounds like this was a choice he made for himself. And it wasn't like something that flowed spontaneously, that just came out that way. But for him, it felt it would be more of a showing of this silence that he felt he was in. Was he completely still? Okay, so he was not, even though there was quite there was this lighter airiness to his mind. There was some slowing of thoughts, unwinding of the tapes in there. But in terms of it being completely done, no. So this was a way he thought it might kind of startle people and show that he was just, in a different reality. And with his way, and people were kind of struck by it, and they were felt like it indeed did touch them that way. And I'm not sure if they asked him why he's speaking that way and got more of a sense of it. It feels like it felt mysterious to people. It felt, did they prefer he spoke? Some of them would like some words to have come, but because they waited, but it never came. So, and he chose to continue with that way of communication, as again he did not want to break into another way of being, for it may show that he has broken, I'm hearing like broken a fast or something for himself. He was very disciplined like that. Like it may show he's it just does not, have that sort of discipline in himself. Like it just would feel like that to him. However, it was self-imposed, this kind of restriction he put on himself. And, to be nonverbal does not equate with stillness inside, or being mauna, which is, completely silent in mind. So those that are completely still inside can certainly be very talkative, very animated. And those that sit there and don't speak, like some attempt to, and their mind is running, 100 miles a minute, what is that about, truly? So it's not a display of, if someone doesn't speak, of stillness inside. But again, for him, it just felt like this is a choice he made. And let's see if it worked well for him. Okay, so it did. I mean, people kind of liked it. They would kind of like it if he talked, though, too. But it was what it was, and they could still feel his energy, and they enjoyed his presence. And in terms of them getting a lot out of it, oh boy, there's kind of a no. So who knows, in terms of his devotees, the kind of progress they made. And it just feels like there was a lot of binding restrictions he put on them that made it, and that was emphasized over being still and fluid and in the moment more. So and there was a lot of concepts thrown around and different things that were a little bit confusing. So, this is part of him that you just see this, again, a puzzle that wasn't totally put together right completely. So even though he did have some energy, and let's see if he had Kundalini. Okay, go up and see. Okay, there's a nice feeling around his heart. I think he was a well-intentioned person, really. I really do. That's the way it feels for him. And, boy, it kind of went weird then. Let's put it up again. See, okay, so Kundalini in him. Yeah, it's light. It's light, and he has a nice energy field around him to feel it. And, just that he's floating and relaxed in the cosmos now is a nice thing. There is a little bit of mind stuff going on for him still. It's light, though. So let's hope he moves forward and dissolves whatever threads remain for him, and because he's a person that really could serve humanity well if he got things all lined up straight. Okay, so anyways, he's an interesting character, and thank you for asking me to do this reading. Namaste. Good night.